Hey guys, so after a long while of me kind of being pretty scared, I finally had another heavy 4ACODMT trip. It was a while since I've had one last. The only reason why I've been waiting is just because it's been getting harder for me to jump into the psychedelic experience, at least in the deep ends of the psychedelic experience, just because my reaction to it has been a bit more intimidating in terms of it kind of feels like a life or death scenario, or like I'm at least taking the chance that I'm going to experience some sort of a death experience. I kind of relate it to the image of the Buddhist monk that set himself on fire in the lotus position. It's like the self-immolation Buddhist monk. That's kind of a symbol that my brain sort of associates the infinite hell of a trip to be. And anytime that I kind of step into the psychedelic experience, I always have it in the back of my mind that I'm taking the chance that I would end up experiencing something of that nature, or at least mentally. It's kind of hard to explain to people that kind of haven't really experienced something like that, but it's definitely something that I don't really take lightly. I have to really show a deep amount of respect for the psychedelic experience when I'm about to go into it, just because of those little drawbacks. But the upside is that it can also be infinite heaven, which is more so where I went this time. So I was kind of getting myself prepared for this. I believe that as long as I give a lot of respect to the experience and kind of premeditate it for a while, it's easier for me to sort of basically take on what I'm about to experience. So how I kind of sort of set myself up to experience it was I kind of went for a walk a lot, and I went to the lake and stuff to kind of really get my mind sort of clear and meditate. I was listening to a lot of music that kind of get me in the mindset. So I would just kind of, just watch the ocean and everything, and take in nature and really kind of feel one with nature, I think, and develop a relationship. I'm past the point where I can just willy-nilly just jump into the psychedelic experience. I really need to use the whole day to kind of show my respect for what I'm about to step into. And basically, when I got home, I ended up watching Star Trek Discovery, because that kind of got me into a more exploratory mindset, just to kind of get me more in the zone to be able to take the plunge. And I decided that I was gonna drop the parachute at 12 o'clock specifically, and this dose was, since I don't have a scale, I don't really know what it is, but I tried to eye out anywhere from 30 to 40 milligrams, which is considered to be a low-level heroic dose. I've taken way higher doses in the past, but for some reason now I'm very very sensitive to the psychedelic experience, or this batch is just incredibly powerful. One of the two, I don't really know. So I took it at 12, and I was still watching Star Trek Discovery, and then once I felt it kind of coming on a little bit, I think this was about maybe 20 minutes later, I went upstairs, went into my bed, made sure that I turned off all the lights, all sound, to do it in silent darkness, the Terrence McKenna style. And how it started was actually really kind of cool, because since I was watching Star Trek Discovery, I started to have visions of basically kind of an ancient-looking outer space, and I felt like I was actually kind of swimming in the galaxy and stuff. It was very visually appealing. This was probably around maybe 50 minutes into the experience, and at this point I wasn't feeling much anxiety at all, or I wasn't feeling any of the fear come on. I'm very sensitive to that fear, because I have experiences in my past where it kind of brought me into infinite hell, and I can sort of sense where the thought loops come from to kind of bring you into that scenario, and then it just piles on, and then it kind of loops into this really really unpleasant experience. Unpleasant being, an understatement. I can't really describe what it's like, but it's definitely something that I would like to try to avoid. Also, before I should go into this a little bit more, before I took the dose, I was doing a lot of ritualistic stuff that kind of keeps me mentally more confident about what I'm about to experience, because my mom, when I was very young, I used to be afraid of the dark, so my mom gave me this sort of protection prayer. It's called like the white light prayer, and I don't know if prayers work or anything like that, but to me, it always makes me feel more secure if I say this white light prayer thing. It's just like, it's basically about like shining a white light of protection and love and whatever. I do that, like, I say it like multiple times before I'm about to go into it, just to like, show respect for what I'm about to go into, and, hope to God that whatever's watching over me can keep me somewhat safe while I go into the unknown. So back to the trip. After I was sort of seeing the galaxy stuff, then the geometric patterns started to come on, and these are pretty standard. They're very complex, and they're kind of like a Fabergé egg type of patterning. It's very interconnected and interweaving and stuff, and there's a lot of faces inside the patterns. It's very beautiful to look at, and there's often a kind of rainbow color sheen on the patterning, and it's kind of like the Matrix patterning, if you guys remember that stuff, but like instead of the symbols and stuff, it's just geometric forms and stuff flowing together in unison and stuff. So it's pretty standard. I experience that often when I take pretty significant doses. So it was nice to experience those little background patternings as well. I ended up around in the 2-hour mark. That's when I usually experience the most powerful states of the experience. And I was starting to feel it come on to sort of the scary type stuff. I remember I was seeing this kind of dark tunnel, and there was like a lot of patterning, but it kind of looked like vines and everything. And there was also almost the ayahuasca type snake tribal patterns. I was kind of seeing those interweaving and stuff in that nature. But something about that dark tunnel, it kind of seemed scary to me, because it seemed like it was going into some sort of dark abyss or some sort of black hole of just I don't know, something scary. But I basically, anytime that happens, I kind of just try to divert my attention any way I can, basically. And this time I was able to do it, and I just kind of stayed away from kind of getting drawn into something like that. But I kind of, I analyzed it a little bit, because I didn't want to be afraid of it. Like, I wanted to confront it. I didn't want it just to be like, oh, that's a dark place, I don't want to go there and stuff. So it was starting to get a little more intense in terms of the mental stuff, and a lot of the time the main fear is the fear of losing control, kind of, or just you start to feel it sort of ramp up in intensity, and then it's like, oh God, now it's merging my thoughts together in a weird way, and that's usually what happens when it begins to become an infinite hell trip. So I was kind of wary of that. I was using more techniques to kind of use no mind to sort of block off all thoughts, so that it didn't start to get into thought loops that would create those negative experiences. And I was successful in doing that. I was not really drawn into the really depth of the anxiety and panic and fear. I was able to sort of keep those feelings away from me, and I was lucky enough that it turned into a very blissful psychedelic experience. I was doing a lot of kind of hand liquidating that I tend to do in psychedelic experiences, just to kind of like go with the flow of everything. And I was seeing a lot of very beautiful sparkly patterns while I was doing that. My hands kind of looked very alien. And the pretty cool thing in this trip was I started to have the sort of glossolalia, or that's what Terence McKenna would call it.
Thing about psilocybin and the DMT thing is that it seems to be a catalyst for glossolalia. This is why I think it must have had something to do with the evolution of language. I mean, when you take psilocybin, you can fall spontaneously into states of glossolalia. Sometimes on DMT, it's almost impossible to control. It just spontaneously comes out. Yeah. Oh, what is glossolalia? Glossolalia, well, here's an example of it, then I'll define it. Sie ding quap maktiki pitech kving hua de molde ruf nubka henget e fapstitolch kvem bedigen hegengtecht. It's language-like activity in the absence of meaning. And it's a very interesting thing neurologically, because notice that speech, ordinary speech, is this highly variable stream of data. We are set up to make these small mouth noises. As a public speaker, I'm very aware of the fact that one can speak without tiring almost longer than you can do any other major human motor activity. And but the glossolalia, such as I just did, it is clearly under the control of rules, but it is not, there is no meaning conventionally conceived of there, but there is syntax. And I think probably that language was invented millennia before meaning, and that you could almost call language toneless singing.
But it's also kind of speaking in tongues. This usually happens, well, not usually, sometimes this happens in very, very heavy psychedelic experiences. I've never been able to really catch it on camera, but this time I had my phone right with me, so I was able to sort of record some of it. I didn't get to record the part where sometimes I'm assuming my voice has a bit of moisture inside, and then sometimes it's able to almost make a double voice. So like it sounds like an echo, but it's like a double voice in when I'm speaking the weird gibberish tongue speak, and it often how this works is that I'm sort of I have a vision, and then I sort of get into a trance state, and then I just start speaking this weird tongue speak automatically, and it sort of drives the visions that I'm seeing, or it uses it as a navigator of some sort, or it starts to move around what I'm seeing or what I'm experiencing. And I feel like that kind of trance thing is almost the source of creativity in some sense, because I feel like I'm tapping into a similar thing when I'm, for instance, playing classical music on the piano, and I get what I call trance-faced, where like I look like I'm sort of, it's hard to explain what I'm experiencing when I'm in that zone, but it seems to be a similar thing that I'm connecting to when I'm in my psychedelic experience and starting to speak in tongues and having this weird trance where I'm seeing this thing that is directly related to the things that the vocalizations that are happening with my mouth. So it's a very bizarre thing, but I think it might have something to do with the source of creativity that we all sort of tap into. There's something elusive that we don't really understand what kind of generates that type of trance and just artistic expression. It's almost like the source of expression or the source of creativity somehow. I don't know what kind of literature is describing that type of stuff, but I feel like it's definitely something tangible, or at least something that we can sort of talk about. But yeah, I was able to catch it on camera. I'll show you guys a little clip of it. But yeah, it didn't last for too long. It was only a short-lived kind of trance state where I was able to speak in these weird vocalizations. Um, I don't know how you know. I don't know how often it happens to other people. I know that Terrence McKenna has talked about it, and apparently in some churches, I think like Pentecostal churches, they have a similar tongue speak, but I don't know if it sounds the same or if it's different or not. But it's definitely a bizarre phenomenon. So I would say that this was a overall very blissful experience. I sort of I had the usual experience where I, believe or felt that as if I was God or something, and the whole universe was just like my own sort of projection. And I felt very connected to everything. I felt one with everything. It was a very beautiful experience, and it's sort of it's made me less fearful to go back into the psychedelic experience. For often when I'm away for a long time, it's harder for me to jump back in because all of the sort of fear of what could happen and the fear of death. That was something that I really wanted to overcome, was my fear of death, and I felt like a coward for not being able to step into that place and be vulnerable again. And I'm very glad I did it. I feel very accomplished in terms of my I guess will and bravery and stuff. It felt like a very brave action, so I knew that it was the right time to have that experience. But yeah, I'm always going to respect it. It's a tremendous power that I don't want to mess with. Unless it's very serious. Because I know the wrath that it can have, and it's just around the corner anytime. And anytime I don't experience that, I just I thank God that I didn't have to experience something very intense and unpleasant. So that was about it. I'll probably be planning an actual smoke DMT trip soon. I'm going to take it easy. I don't want to jump right into it and feel like I'm unstoppable or anything. I want to treat it with respect, but I'll let you guys know how that one goes. So I'll see you in the next video.